evening, everyone. Welcome to our webinar today on International Women's Day. I'm delighted to introduce and bring Pippa Savory for us this evening. So I'm really looking forward to her session, True Story Coaching. A couple of bits and pieces housekeeping for you before we kick off. So just to make you aware that the webinar is being recorded and that everyone in attendance this evening will be in listen-only mode. The session will last for about 60 minutes. That will be about 40 minutes of a presentation from Pippa, and we'll conclude with a Q&A at the end. So please do submit any questions you have by the question panel on your dashboard, and we'll address as many of those as we can at the end of Pippa's session. Following the webinar, we'll also make the recording available for you all, and that will be on the APM YouTube account. And the slides will also be published by APM on our SlideShare account. You'll receive all of this information from APM Direct after today's session. So you'll have all the correct links to access that information. Also, just so you're aware that the session does count towards your CPD if that's of interest to you and you wanted to record your hours. So today we're going to be joined by Pippa Savory. Pippa is now doing what she loves most, which is helping professional women feel as successful on the inside as they are on the outside. Having worked in the corporate world for 30 years, with the last decade on the board as HR director, in 2020, Pippa made the decision to set up her own coaching practice, True Story Coaching. So without any further ado, I'm going to hand over to Pippa. She's going to introduce herself and then kick off the session for this evening, and then we'll do a Q&A at the end. So please do enjoy and do submit your questions as we go. Okay, over to you, Pippa. Thank you.
Hey, everybody. Thank you for inviting me to the APM, for inviting me this evening, and thank you very much, Sarah, for the introduction. I'm going to stay online so you can see me on the camera just for a short introduction because I can't see my slides and see myself. So it's a very strange setup, so apologies, but I will come back on the camera for the Q&A at the end. So once again, thank you very much for inviting me. Happy International Women's Day, everybody. And I really hope that you enjoy this short presentation this evening. If you have any questions, as Sarah said, please submit them as we go along, and I'll be more than happy to answer those at the end. So I'm going to hop off the camera now just so I can see my slides, and I'll see you again really shortly. So by way of a kind of more full introduction, I guess, yeah, before we get into it, I'd really like to introduce myself. So my name is Pippa Savory. I'm a really strong advocate for all things equality. Since most of us are advocates for equality, you may be wondering what qualifies me to present this webinar to you this evening. And using the word qualified is probably quite ambitious, to be honest. I'm not entirely sure what qualifications are needed for this evening, but I'm going to give it my best shot, which is all I can do. To give you some backstory, I grew up in a very normal 3-bed semi with my parents and my older sister. We were a working class family. My dad was a carpenter. My mum was a part-time secretary and did the very traditional thing at the time of, making sure my sister and I got to school and etc. and got home from school. I attended the local state primary school. I played with my friends out on the street until it was dark, and I spent my weekends normally outside in the garden or helping my dad fix stuff or make stuff under the carport. Just a very normal upbringing. My secondary school was an all-girls school. It was a state school. In addition to the academic lessons, there was a lot of hockey, a lot of netball, and a lot of instruction from the teachers of how to avoid the lads from the local boys' school who definitely like to hang around the school gates. During my teenage years, I rode horses almost every weekend. I never owned my own horse. I was never privileged enough for that. I had to work at the stables all day. I was mucking out, sweeping the yard, just to be in a chance of getting a ride on one of those ponies. And that was my life for many years. So by the time I left school at age 16, I was pretty hardy. I knew who I was confident, And I'd really been encouraged at home and by my teachers throughout my childhood. And despite being a high achiever at school, and that was not through luck, that was a lot of hard work, I chose to go straight to work at the age of 16. I didn't go to college, I didn't go to university. For the first few years of my employment, I tried out a few different roles. I had no idea what I wanted to do. I just knew I wanted to work, I wanted to earn money, I wanted to be successful, and that was my idea of success at the time. I was always working extremely hard to achieve the next thing. Bought my first house at 19 and, you know, thought I was on the path to making it. On reflection, sort of in my late 40s now, and I look back, I realised that I always had male bosses. And it wasn't really anything I thought about at the time, but I always had male bosses, always. And I feel extremely fortunate that in the main, they were extremely supportive. And they didn't appear to see my gender, but just my potential and my talent. But I also worked in a very male-dominated industry. I worked in automotive industry for 12 years. And then I worked in the fit-out industry for another 12 years, actually. And that really had its challenges. And I'm sure that's something a lot of you here can relate to as well. I recall a lot of getting talked over in meetings. Being looked at as the one to take minutes in the meeting room. The PA wasn't available. Being on the end of friendly banter that was sexist and inappropriate. But honestly, I don't believe any of that was done with malice. I really enjoyed my male colleagues, my female colleagues. I never thought it was done with malice. It was never done with malice. But the behaviours and the comments did actually stick with me. And they didn't stick with me as in I had a problem with it at the time, but I think they must have just, sometimes I thought it was a bit close to the edge, but maybe just stuck in my subconscious. And it wasn't until my roles became more senior that I really started to feel different. I still felt very supported by my male bosses, and externally I looked confident and I looked in control, but inside I was starting to feel very inferior. So when I reflect, it's quite clear to me how I went from this confident 16-year-old, hardy young woman who could literally take on the world, to my place as one of the only females on the board at the age of 37, or the only female on the board at age 37, and feeling like I was undeserving and quite frankly not good enough. And from there, really, it only got worse. So being in a senior role, being that only woman on the board, the demands, the pressures, the deadlines, the expectations all heightened. And I was trying to balance my family life with my work at the same time. And my husband is a very successful professional in his own right, and he's absolutely done amazingly well, and I'm so, so proud of him. He's very in tune with supporting women in business. So it was not because I was told that I had to be at home or expected to be at home with the kids. It was really more of an expectation on myself, and it was just the way things happened to be. I mean, we had a nanny and stuff like that when I was working full time, but I always felt like it was my job to pick up that emotional load at home. I was also commuting into London each day, which was exhausting, as I'm sure lots of you can relate to. And actually, I loved my actual job. I loved my job, but I just didn't love how I was starting to feel. And I realised that I was so tuned in to my masculine energy, always striving for something, always competing, always, you know, if not with someone else, normally just with myself, but always trying to be successful and pushing myself and kind of coming from this place of push all the time. And I'd become this person, or rather this energy, that was not really aligned to who I really am. And it felt off, and then it felt like really hard work. And I really felt like I was losing myself. And that sounds dramatic, I know, but I can't think of another way to explain it. Just completely unaligned, unsure of who I was becoming, and just really not enjoying life, and quite honestly, just quite unhappy. So I ended up making the decision to leave, and I decided I was going to set up on my own. And that way I could have more control, more balance, and be less frantic with my time and my mental health. Then I quickly got offered this amazing job by a competitor before I got the chance to set myself up. And honestly, I let my ego take over. I took the role, and over the 2 years that followed, I allowed my confidence to erode, and my inner critic was shouting louder than ever. And I was so low, I was no longer bothered about saving face, because that's really why I stuck around so long. And I took the decision to leave in early 2020. I put my ego to one side and left that world and finally set up my own coaching business. And it took such a lot to leave. And the reason it did, despite me being unhappy, was because I had worked so incredibly hard all that time to get to where I got to. And I felt really disappointed that I felt so inferior, and I felt so like my confidence was just being lost, and just so unhappy. And it was a big decision, actually, a huge decision that I couldn't really explain to anybody. But anyway, I made that decision and I left. And now, as Sarah said, I help purpose-driven women feel as successful on the inside as they are on the outside. And that's my kind of tagline. And the reason I say that is because many women and men, but many women that we're talking about today look successful on the outside, are successful on the outside. You know, they're looked at by other people and envied almost. And, you know, people think, wow, she's done so well for herself and she's smashing it and she looks great. But on the inside, often we just don't feel that way. So my clients are a range of professional women from within the corporate world and entrepreneurs. And the thing they all have in common is these limiting beliefs. And the belief really that they're not good enough. That's what it comes down to, and that they're going to get caught out with these frauds. And they normally overwork to mitigate any risk of being seen as anything less than perfect, or they procrastinate, the other end of the scale, and they keep themselves quiet and in the background, or avoid as much as they can as getting visible on projects because of their fear of failure. So I help these women uncover where these beliefs come from, and together we transform them into much more empowering and useful beliefs and behaviours that can help them grow, expand their presence, and allow them to contribute at their fullest, which is all we want to be doing when we're in the professional world. We can't be doing with all these limiting beliefs getting in our way. It's very inconvenient. So the point of me telling you my backstory is that I entered the workplace feeling confident all those years ago. 30 years ago. I largely had these supportive male bosses, but a very male-dominated environment and the lack of female leaders to be my role models and someone for me to aspire to just did not exist. The more senior I became, the less senior female allies I had around me, which meant the more self-doubt that I had. So International Women's Day, this year's International Women's Day is about choosing to challenge. It's about challenging the way we think. A challenged world is an alert world, and from challenge comes change. And that is what International Women's Day have brought to us this year. And the change we're seeking today is better gender equality. The more equal the workplace, the more opportunities there are for women, the more senior women we have. That only helps with that good old gender pay gap, but it also means that we have more female role models for younger generations to come. And that, like I say, is where I had the challenge, where I just didn't have the women around me to think, actually, am I normal feeling like this? I have no one I can really talk to about this, despite having the support of male bosses around me. So just some recent stats that have been released about gender equality recently. So there's some global data released by the UN, UN Women, that suggests that the pandemic has put gender equality back by 25 years. And this is a result of women doing more of these domestic chores and caring duties. So we're still in that space of it's the women's job to go and do that. The gender pay gap, pre-pandemic, 2019, you know, from November 14th to 6 weeks of that year, we were effectively working for free because of the gap in how gender pay gap is calculated. And with the pandemic, it's been reported, you know, it's affected females in employment far greater than men, because we've generally had this lower quality of work arrangements and have been made redundant, and also far more women were furloughed during the pandemic than men too. You would hope that the pandemic has taught us flexible working on the whole works. You know, I challenge employers to consider how they can retain some of this so we can help with gender equality and the issues going forward. It would be so easy to go back to where we were in 2019 in so many ways with flexible working. And, you know, it's something that I've definitely spoken with my husband about, who commutes into London and works, you know, he's out of the house 70 hours a week normally. And you just think, this must have taught us something, that some work can be done remotely, and actually we can have a much better balance in our lives and better mental health. And then in 2020, I just thought this was an interesting fact. I was so surprised by it. I had to share it with you, that out of these top 200 best-selling books, only 17 were written by female authors. And when I read that, I thought, I'm choosing to challenge my own reading list, and I'm going to buy books from female authors for the rest of this year, or download podcasts from female professionals for the rest of the year. So it's incredible, really. And, you know, why are we still talking about equality when it comes to gender? So for centuries, we've been receiving these strong messages through societal conditioning, where men are expected to be strong and driven and assertive, competitive. You know, they are our providers, courageous and independent. They lead us in the workplace and in our domestic side of our lives too. And then, you know, the list goes on, but basically it's around success and winning for men, or for that masculine energy. You know, they started out fishing and hunting and providing, and as women, we were cooking and weaving and pottery making, although if you live in my house, you would not want to see me cooking. You know, men were expected to be the strong ones, to look after the women, and the women were expected to be the agreeable ones and looking after the children. And, you know, and growing up, I was reflecting on what it was like growing up, and even though I grew up in a very balanced household, when I think about the things around me, I think, you know, these male heroes are rescuing damsels in distress on the TV, and you had these Disney films full of princesses looking pretty. And growing up in the 70s, you know, my toys were prams and dollies, and my male friends had grifter bikes and Star Wars figures. It was so different. And you only have to think back to that Yorkie chocolate bar advert. It's not for girls. It's just so insulting. I find so insulting. And that was only broadcast 19 years ago, the age of my son, which is just incredible. So the bottom line is that society has created these stereotypes, as we know, and you know this stuff too. And we also know we're all here to change that. So what you can say is this has created this large divide in the energies that both men and women have. So regardless of gender, we all have masculine energy and we all have feminine energy. And the way in which these energies show up largely correlates with the stereotypes that I just spoke about. So the masculine energy shows itself as driven and competitive and fierce, ambitious. Basically, it's getting stuff done. Whereas the feminine energy is much more nurturing, intuitive, patient, healing. It's expressive. It's much more soft and calm, more empathetic, and we kind of look inwards more. So the masculine energy, you would have heard of the yang and the yin. Masculine's yang, feminine's yin. And they're both also known as divine masculine and divine feminine. And because of the patriarchal system that's developed throughout time, divine feminine has been degraded. It's looked down upon and oppressed. So sometimes as women, we avoid using these amazing qualities we already have within us. They're already there because they're seen as less relevant, perhaps in the workplace, less important and inferior to those more masculine traits. And therefore, we just avoid tapping into them. As time passes and the human race obviously evolves, pandemic aside and going back 25 years aside, there's been this like a rekindling in the need for this devotion and commitment to the divine feminine. And you may have heard of the awakening of the divine feminine, and that's what it's talking about. So a balance of both these energies, feminine and masculine, is necessary in the human race and to continue, our evolution. And as society matures and evolves, and we appreciate and encourage men to be balanced too, they need to be more balanced too. All men and women alike are called to empower this divine feminine. So it's extremely important that we have a balance of these energies. And if we were just to focus on the feminine, the world would be at peace, but possibly not very productive. And if we were to focus on just masculine energy, then we would potentially always be at war. So a balance is needed to get stuff done, but in a peaceful manner. So as professional women, we're so programmed to operate in this masculine energy rather than the balanced energy. And actually, as men, I believe men are still very much programmed in this masculine energy, and there's more men reaching inwards, actually looking inwards and looking more at their divine energy, whether they know it feminine, whether they know that it's that or not, but actually getting more in touch with themselves and thinking about having more of a balanced life. And the truth of the matter is, when women spend years operating in hyper-masculine energy, it's exhausting. We experience high levels of stress and overwhelm and burnout, and it's just not fun. And that's when that good old imposter syndrome rears its head. Your inner critic is shouting loudly. You start comparing yourself to other people. You look for external validation that you're worthy. And it stems from these limiting beliefs. They're created either from deep-rooted childhood experiences or the way in which the system has taught your subconscious mind that being feminine is weak, or possibly a bit of both. And that's where the challenge comes. So when you've been in that space of masculine energy and you start moving back towards activating more feminine energy in the way that you lead, you live your life, you work, everything changes. Your mental health, your relationships, your enjoyment of work, and how aligned you feel. And when we feel aligned with ourselves, we feel happier. And of course, when we're happier, we can be our best selves at work, which sounds cheesy, but it's absolutely true. The more happy you feel in your own skin, the better you can show up, the more you can contribute. And it's so important that we're in that space, not just for our happiness and our mental health, obviously, but also to promote and embrace diversity, because until we can be ourselves in the workplace, until we can say what we think and behave in a way that's just really aligned to who we are, can we be our most creative and productive? And diversity is not just about the colour of our skin or the gender that we were born with. It's about diversity of thinking, and we can only contribute different thoughts to the workplace to become better in the workplace, have a competitive edge in the workplace, if we are allowed this kind of cognitive freedom to be ourselves. And we only achieve cognitive freedom of mind by feeling comfortable in our own skin. So it's really important to reiterate, for both men and women, we have this divine balance. But the patriarchy in society and our upbringing, so many other factors make this harder for women to achieve. So I want to give you an example of this. So two women's faces that you will know very well. It's still widely believed that you can't be strong and compassionate. And this example, I think, challenges that. So you take these two major female figures. You've got Hillary Clinton. She's very much in her masculine energy. She's been described as unlikable by millions of Americans. She's militant and brash and driven. She's quite distant. She's quite impersonal. And then you take Michelle Obama, and this woman is universally loved. She's motivating, inspiring. She's quite vulnerable. She comes across as very compassionate, intuitive. She's got this great self-esteem and confidence about her. And Becoming, which is her best-selling book, 2018 in the States, generated more sales than any other book in the world. So you can see what influence and impact she has globally. So Michelle has this greater presence. And because of this, she's got great leadership qualities. She's got this know, like, and trust factor, and people love her, generally love her. They want to follow her and they want to please her. And in the Barrett campaign trails, I'm not sure if you may know this already, actually, she was brought in at the end. So Michelle Obama was brought in. She was known as the closer. And people would be in awe of her speaking. You know, she really touched their hearts. She was real and soft and strong at the same time. She instilled this trust in people, and it actually influenced the way they voted. So she has a brilliant feminine and masculine balance of energy, and it's so magnetic as it's who she really is. She comes across, she's this strong, powerful woman, but she's inspiring, compassionate, intuitive, and soft. So two women, both on the global stage, both with very different vibes, and the world responds to them dramatically differently. So when we achieve this better balance of energy, it feels really good, it's authentic. It's easier than trying to live through more masculine energy all the time. And because it's authentic and feels good, people feel it too. You know, you radiate it, it's magnetic. And along with professional credibility, it's one of the main magic ingredients to creating great relationships within the workplace, because people want to be around you. They want to work for you. They want to do well for you. So how can we achieve this balance? So activating this divine feminine, it doesn't mean being passive. That's not what it means at all. It's about feeling comfortable and confident that you will continue to be accepted and heard if you are more balanced. And that the traits of this divine feminine energy have as much importance as those of the masculine traits. And it's not to say women should not demonstrate traits of masculine energy. Of course not. You know, being assertive, strong leaders, being ambitious and driven is everyone's right. And I'm sure a lot of people listening to this evening are absolutely in that space. You know, you're professionally qualified project managers, and you know, working in this industry is difficult. I completely understand that. It's a tough gig. It really is. So I'm sure a lot of the time you are working in your masculine energy. But when we balance this with this powerful intuition and vulnerability and softness, it's even more powerful and even more enjoyable. And like I say, without trying to kind of really drive it home, being able to do that and having the confidence to show up in more of a balance takes courage. It really takes courage. And when I think back to the most successful times in my career, it's when I have had this strong but soft way about me. You know, I can be assertive but compassionate, and unstoppable but vulnerable at the same time. And it's balancing it all out unconsciously, really, or subconsciously, and most importantly, feeling in flow and aligned. And I think if you are working from a place of masculine energy right now, and you try some of these things out, we're going to talk about in a moment, and really consciously try and work in a much more balanced energy, and you know, I think you will find that you get possibly, well, you just observe it. I challenge you, you know, we challenge it. It's a Choose to Challenge Day. I challenge you to do that. And I challenge you to notice and observe the response that you get. And I wonder whether the response won't be any different, because you're already very credible professionals, but you might just feel better yourself. You might just feel more aligned and less burnt out and less stressed, or you may get a better response from people. But I encourage you to challenge yourself on that and really notice what happens. So yeah, if you've lived and worked for so long in this masculine energy, how do you make that shift? You know, how do you do it? It may be that you've not even been aware of these different energies until today. It may be that you've been aware of these different emotions and how you may not feel quite aligned to your work. I can guarantee some of you will feel very happy in the job that you're in, but not happy potentially, you know, questioning yourself. So, you know, maybe questioning how good you are at your job, or maybe questioning why you feel so burnt out, or maybe questioning why people aren't listening. I don't know, but I challenge you to think of to start thinking differently about that and start behaving differently and see what response you get. So tuning into this, whether you're male or female, it's about being strong and soft, opening and receptive. And in this society, like I say, it takes courage to be that vulnerable, but try it and see. So how do we do this? These sound very simple, and every time I look at them, I just talk about them, I think they sound so simple, but they are absolutely true. So bear with me on this one. So I would ask yourself, are you open to receiving? And, you know, the saying goes, give a woman love and she'll give it back, and give a woman hate. You know, we all know how that ends. Are you open to receiving? And we're not very good at receiving as women. We're not very good at receiving compliments. We're not very good at receiving help, or we're not very good at asking for help either. But try something different. And, you know, if you're anything like I used to be, someone would say, oh, I really like those shoes, or something like that. And rather than just taking the compliment, I'd go, oh, yeah, well, they were in the sale, and kind of make up a reason as to why I've got them, which isn't just silly. So make sure you receive compliments and open your heart to receiving those. And also ask for help if you need it. Ask questions if you need help. Nurture yourself. So be kind to yourself. Treat yourself like the incredible woman that you are, or man, of course. Stop working in the evenings. I bet you do that all the time, and doing jobs in the evenings. And I know it's difficult. I know it's hard not to do that. But even if you try something, try doing it. If you normally work 4 evenings in the week, try just working 3, and try and then reducing it a bit. Take the time for yourself. Make yourself a priority. Do more of the things that you love. You know, what have you given up for others maybe? What brings you joy? What can you do to bring that back into your life? And all these things raise your vibrational energy, your feminine energy. So do some of those things that you really enjoy. Believe in yourself more. And I know it's easy to say that, but if you don't have belief in yourself, then how can you expect to magnetize other people to believe in you too? You're working on your mindset, accepting who you are, being self-compassionate, and building that kind of belief that self-worth is really important. There's podcasts, there's numerous things on YouTube. There's so many things that you can connect with to help your mindset, self-acceptance, self-worth. Be creative and playful. You know, making time for fun is so important. And I know that can be quite challenging at the moment in lockdown still, but you know, there's change around the corner, can't come soon enough. But you can still be creative and playful at home. You know, what can you do to reconnect to your childlike self, you know, your inner child? What did you used to like doing? I mean, I remember I used to sit there with my kids when they were younger, colouring in, and my husband would be too, and then they'd be gone. Half an hour later, we're still sat there doing it. And now, of course, it's trendy and it's called mindfulness. But things like that, or painting, or it could be anything, candle making. I went through a phase of that once. And just something that really tunes into your creative side. Send your lover a naughty note. How about that? That's quite playful. Sensuality, you know, your body is a temple. It's the only way as women, it's the only way to bring new life into this world, and should therefore be treated as such. It's a temple. Have a bath, light some candles. Again, it sounds really simple, but it's about telling your mind, yourself, your soul, that you're important, that you should be looked after, that you're important. Buy yourself some new underwear, men and women. All for you, something special for you. And surrender. And this is really difficult. And what I mean by this is, rather than always being in that kind of hustle, you know, in that push, in that trying to achieve, in that always looking for the next thing, always thinking about the next thing, trying to control everything. Just show up, do your best, be balanced, and surrender. You know, let go of the outcome. And I don't mean let go of the project and let it all go sliding off a mountain, but I mean just do what you need to do to be your professional self, but don't over control everything. Be strong and gentle, this intuitive, intelligent woman that you are, and let go of this outcome. So they're the main things that I would suggest, and I challenge you to do it, and I challenge you to challenge your thinking if you think they're all quite basic, which they are, but they're also extremely effective. So that's what some of the things to tune into your feminine energy and become more balanced, and improving your self-worth through mindset work, improving your confidence, and keeping that inner critic quieter, and uncovering some of these beliefs you may have to reduce that imposter syndrome. So that is the end of what I'm sharing with you right now. And I think we may have some questions, or we might have some questions. I can't see anything on my screen right now. So Sarah, I don't know if you are there and can chip in.
Yes, Pippa. Hi, it's Sabrina.
Oh, hi.
You mentioned you would put your camera on. Would you like to put your camera on for our panel? That's
Yeah.
okay for the Q&A.
I think I've got it right.
Yeah,
The most
perfect.
untechnical person on the planet I am, so I'm quite impressed I did.
Okay, so to kickstart the question, Pippa, we have one around confidence. Can you give me a tip for helping with my confidence, please?
Yes. So, crikey, I mean, there's so many things you can do for confidence, but one thing, if you feel like you need a boost in confidence before maybe a meeting or a client meeting or something big that's coming up, and you're feeling a bit wobbly, one thing you can do, and actually you can, before you need it in the moment, you can start practicing this. So start practicing it tonight, even if you feel okay right now. So you can use something called anchoring. And if what you need to do is find a quiet place, take some deep breaths, and tune in to yourself. So I would close your eyes, tune into yourself, and think of a time when you felt really confident, and visualize what you were doing in that moment, what was happening, why did you feel so confident, what was it that was making you feel confident, and really tune into how that really felt inside. And you'll probably feel it somewhere in your body. And whilst you're doing it, I would pinch your thumb with your fingers, and that's called anchoring. So you're anchoring those feelings into that pressure point. And the more you practice this, when you go to press your thumb, when you're needing a little confidence boost, your brain kicks into that feeling and makes you feel more confident. So it's something you practice. You always have to practice. It's like building a muscle, but it's something you can use, and it's quite handy because you can maybe, you could put it under your desk, or you could do it quite discreetly. So practicing when you felt confident, anchoring it into a point like your thumb, putting pressure on it, really thinking about it and practicing that. And it's something you can use in the moment really quickly and easily. Hopefully that's, and of course, to build like confidence longer term, stuff like that, it takes a lot of kind of mindset work. But yeah, that's something you can, a quick tip.
Fantastic, Pippa. What a great tip. Do we have any other question from anyone in the chat? Anyone has any question for Pippa? While we probably wait for others.
Okay. I put my details after this. Not everyone likes to ask questions in these things, but if there's any questions afterwards, then ping me an email and I'm happy to answer them.
Hi Pippa, it's Sarah here. There's a few questions here that I can share with you, so I'll start to go through those. Sorry, Sabrina, if you're unable to see those at the moment. So one question that's come through for you is, how can we get more present to how can we get more present to unconscious bias so hard when it is unconscious?
Sorry, say that again. How can we
get more present to unconscious bias so hard when it is unconscious?
Unconscious bias is an interesting one. So yeah, of course, when it's unconscious, we don't know it's there. And the best way of trying to uncover some of these unconscious biases that we have is really to start conversations. So I would always encourage you to set forums up at work, have conversations with each other around what things affect you in the workplace, what things, you will learn a thing or two about the types of things that maybe you've never thought about, things that you might say, behaviours that you might have or you've been on the receiving end of. But starting conversations is really the only quick way of figuring out some of the stuff that needs to be uncovered. Because like you say, whoever asked that question, you don't know you've got it. You don't know what you don't know at that point. So start conversations with people.
Okay, thank you. That's handy. Right, we have another one from Carrie, a very practical one. Could you give some tips on how to approach asking for promotion?
Asking for a promotion. Okay. Well, first of all, I would say, and I have a very strong belief in how we feel and how we show up actually is what we attract into our lives. So if you want a promotion, then I would act as if you were already going to get the promotion, and your behavior will come across slightly different, and you'll come across as slightly more confident as well. But asking for a promotion, I would always ask what it is that you need to demonstrate to earn that promotion, rather than obviously just asking for it. So what can I do to achieve the next level? How's that going to be measured? What would you like to see from me? When can we next put the chat in the diary? And what's my path going to be to get there? And, it's a two-way thing. If your employer can give you some tips on what they think you need, it's up to you to demonstrate that. So obviously no one's going to just ask for a promotion, but what can I do to get to the next level? What do you need to see from me? And it's not just about professional qualifications or being chartered or anything like that. It's about there's two things. I'd say, what do you need to see from me skill wise and technically? What do you want to see from me? What do you want me to do? And what's going to set me apart from everyone else?
Yeah, okay, that's lovely, thank you. I mean, it sounds like it's really sort of planting the seed that's your ambition and your aspiration to achieve promotion, but looking for some guidance from your line manager as to what it is you need to do to get there. So
yeah,
that's really cool.
Yeah, and having belief in yourself it's going to happen.
Yeah, that is really good one, actually. Yeah, belief from the outset, absolutely.
Yes.
So we have another one here from Tracy Ann. Tracy Ann says, you mentioned how difficult it was to leave your last position. How did you prepare yourself to make that move and build that self-confidence to take the leap?
Yeah, it was really difficult, Tracy, and it like I said, it was really hard because I felt like I'd worked so hard for so long trying to get to that position, and the realization that actually it wasn't everything I thought it was going to be, and not necessarily the company, but just myself. I was so kind of disappointed and felt so deflated, and just thought, if I walk away, am I walking away? That's my identity. My family, my friends, everybody knew me for being this woman who was always striving for a career, always always a strong person and wanting that. So walking away from it, I felt like I was walking away from my identity, and that's what made it hard. And what made it easier was the support of my family, my husband, and also I think I just got to the point where I was so unhappy. I just thought, what can I do to change this? Because if I'm unhappy here, then I'm unhappy at home, and it's just not fair on everybody else. And taking a risk, taking a chance, but again, trying to I'm a great believer in visualization, but trying to visualize that actually it was all going to be fine. And if it wasn't, it was just part of the learning. And I also have a great belief in thinking, rather than when things don't go our way, and they don't always, as an entrepreneur, it's tough, it's hard, but it's also extremely rewarding, and I would never change that. But if things don't go our way, rather than thinking, why has this happened to me? I think, why has this happened for me? You know, and I'm not saying I'm happy 100% of the time, but why has it happened for me? What can I learn from this? What's the learning? What am I being taught here? How am I going to do it differently next time?
Yeah, great. So always taking something from everything then, really. That's a good,
Yeah.
good idea. This is a great question, I think, and from Olivia. What advice would you give your 22-year-old self?
What would I give what advice would I give? I would think I would say, I've never been asked that question. I think I would say that to enjoy life more and stop being in push mode all the time. Stop always wanting the next thing, always striving for more, never just being, and being happy with where I am, what I've got. I think I'd say that. Slow down, maybe.
So to really take stock in what you've achieved to date and sort of enjoy it rather than rushing on to the next thing.
Yeah, I don't think we're very good generally, but women particularly, at celebrating our success and celebrating where we've got to. And I've met some incredible women in the last year, and we all ask each other when something really good happens, how are you going to celebrate? And it's such a change for me to think about that. But yeah, celebrate where you are already.
Yeah, great, thank you. Right, so next question is from Lisa. And Lisa says, hi, any tips to manage a very strong masculine energy? Strong driver, but does not listen and will state how the project delivered without knowing the facts.
Managing a strong, so not being a strong driver, managing somebody who's a strong driver.
Yes, I think that's what's been asked, yeah.
I would, if I had a very strong driver that I was managing and it was very factual, I would ask them to consider open questions. This is always a good one, but ask them to consider, if they were to, ask them to reflect on it. Say, right, rather than spending an hour now doing your emails or writing a report, whatever it is you're doing, do all the time, I want you to spend the next hour reflecting on what you've done so far to date, how you would do something differently, but tune into their emotion to try and move away from the masculine energy. So how has that made you feel? How do you feel now? And try and get them to tune into their emotion more. And yeah, try and slow them down a little bit, because I think when we're always in our masculine, it's always the next thing, and actually some mistakes can be made then. So ask them to slow it down, tune into their emotion, ask them some questions you wouldn't normally ask them around intuition and reflection.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And talking masculine energy, I have 2 questions from our LinkedIn meet and greet. So basically the chat, but on LinkedIn for this event. The first one is, how do you maintain balance between feminine and masculine energy when creating content on LinkedIn?
That is a really interesting question, because the content I put on LinkedIn, I think, is quite feminine, and it doesn't get as much traction as somewhere like Instagram. Actually, I tell you what happens on LinkedIn. You put something on there that's a bit feminine and you get direct message. People don't engage with it publicly, which is quite insightful, I think. But putting content on LinkedIn between masculine and feminine, I mean, LinkedIn is obviously a professional platform, and people are there because they are wanting to have a good career and be successful and achieve. So I think we need to talk about that, and but also put a softness to it. So I always try and do that with my posts, but I always feel a little bit exposed on LinkedIn, I won't lie to you. Yeah, talk about business, talk about professional stuff, but also talk about emotion. And It might feel a bit weird, because I feel a bit weird doing it. But if we don't do that and go outside our own comfort zone, how are we going to change the way we talk about things?
Wow, very powerful. Just get out there and create content and see what happens.
Yeah.
It's be vulnerable, basically. Brilliant. The next one is also around masculine energy, but mainly being in a masculine environment. So what tips would you give to a woman working in managerial role in a construction company, which is so masculine, and generally men hate to take order from women?
Mm-hmm. Well, first of all, that's their issue, not yours. And I would say 100% stay true to who you are. I know it's so hard, and you have to put up with all sorts of things, and it's a sweeping statement because there's many amazing men in the construction industry, but it is tough. And I think staying true to who you are, tuning into that feminine energy, I keep banging on about it, but it's absolutely true, you know, tuning into that and showing a softer side. The reason a diverse world works better and a diverse workplace is more profitable and effective and innovative and all those amazing things that we strive for is because of diverse thinking, like I said earlier on. So if you're a woman trying to be like a man in a construction industry, it's not a very diverse workplace, and you know, you've got to have the courage to stay true to who you are and you know, tune into that feminine energy. It's very difficult, and I do recall, I used to, you know, I said about being on the end of inappropriate banter, I used to give it back too. And actually now I think some of it was fine, but some of it was not. And actually, why did I do that? Why did I allow myself to get involved in that? Why did I kind of compromise my integrity to go down that road? So yeah, I don't know if that's the right, not the right answer, but I don't know if that's an answer that satisfies you, but be authentic.
Brilliant. Leading with authenticity. That's another bit of homework. Thank you very much, Pippa. Sarah, do you have a question on the chat?
Yeah, I have plenty of questions. So just to make everyone aware, if we don't manage to get through all the questions this evening, we will send them on to Pippa afterwards, in the hope that we can get those back from her, and we'll share those after this evening. But we've still got a bit of time, so I've got a couple more I'll relay to you, Pippa. Right, do you have any advice for women starting out their career in project management? Steps to take, resources to use, and how to gain a sense of authority?
Specifically in project management, no, because I haven't been a project manager, but starting out a professional career and gaining authority is to not step too much into, I would advise not to step too much into the kind of, you know, I've worked with lots of women who've been at the very beginning of their career, and they've come in thinking they need to be like a bull in a china shop because they have to, you know, get ahead and show that they're as good as everybody else, and actually it kind of puts people off. I think just being you, and I keep saying this, but women are incredible beings, human beings, as are men, but as I'm talking to mostly women, just be you know, you need to kind of, you need to dig deep sometimes to ask questions and come across as being more confident. And I don't really believe in this fake it till you make it. I think be yourself until you feel comfortable, but don't strive to be everything and do everything and achieve everything straight away. Show you're keen, but don't overcompensate by going into your masculine energy.
Okay, thank you. We have a question here from Robin. I also work in a heavy male-dominated industry. Are there any tips for squishing those strong imposter syndrome feelings? I would love to build up to those senior roles, but struggle to believe I have the same skills as those senior males.
Imposter syndrome is horrific. It's a horrible thing to have to cope with, and it comes from not necessarily it comes from these deep-rooted, these are beliefs that we have. This is our belief system, our imposter syndrome. So somewhere along the line, I would suggest that you have been exposed to something, whether you remember it or not, because it will be in your subconscious mind, no doubt. You'll have been exposed to something that's telling you you're not as good as everybody else. And that often comes from a very, very early young age, actually, normally before we're 7 years old. And something would have happened to make you feel not as worthy as everybody else. So in terms of quick fixes, there's not a lot of quick fixes for imposter syndrome, but trying to feel confident, like I said, you could use the anchoring technique, but believing you're as good as everybody else, you have to take a punt on yourself a lot of the time. And drop me a line after if you want to talk about this in more detail, and I can understand a bit more about you. But it will have come from a deep-rooted belief, and it's about finding out what that is. You need to understand where it came from, so you can transform it into something else, which is entirely possible to do, and then you can leave that imposter syndrome behind. But it's so common in women. It's so common in men too, but also mostly in women, and that's because men and women have these limiting beliefs, but women also have this layer of conditioning over the top of them.
Okay, so one of the steps is recognizing that you suffer from it in the beginning, and then trying to get to the root of it.
Yeah, recognizing, I mean, a couple of things, definitely, Sarah, you're right, recognizing you suffer with it. The other thing you could do, which works quite well, is often with imposter syndrome comes the saboteur or the inner critic.
Yeah.
And a good way of trying to manage that short term is actually to give it a name and disassociate yourself from it. So you could give it a name, you could give it an image. It doesn't necessarily need to be a face, but it could be something. Give it a name, give it an image. And when you feel it coming on, acknowledge it's there, and then say hello to it and put it away in a box and say, I'm not interested in talking to you today. I know you're there. Quite happy, thank you, as I am. If it keeps coming back, start writing down what's happening that makes it come into your mind, and what's it saying to you. And that will give you some insight probably as to why it keeps coming back and where that belief. Try that too.
Okay, thank you. Right, we've still got a couple of minutes, so a couple more questions here, if that's okay. One from Philippa. Can you explain a little bit more about the importance of allies and how we go about gaining allies? Do they have to be female?
I don't think well, in my experience, like I said, I had some very supportive male bosses around me. But they didn't always, they were supportive in the workplace, but they didn't always understand, I had all this other stuff. I felt like I had to get home for the kids. I felt like I couldn't be at that meeting at 8 in the morning because it meant leaving home at 6. And I really wanted to be there until like 8 in the morning at home and come in at 9. So yeah, having males around me was easy, but I think having females around you, they just have a different understanding of what it's like and the kind of things other than the workplace that we have going on. And also, we receive things differently from men. Sometimes you can have a conversation at work, and if it's with a guy and it's quite difficult, they kind of have it and they move on, whereas women, we sometimes really stew on it and overthink it, and then we catastrophize it, and we think, oh God, we're going to get the sack, or we're going to get found out, and they're going to think I'm rubbish, and all of those things. And I think women can have conversations with women about things like that. And I think having a supportive network of women around you is so powerful. So if you can, as you climb the career ladder, the more senior females that are around, the better, because they just have a different understanding. So yes, I would say having female allies is important. And the way of building those female ally relationships is a lot through vulnerability, because someone's got to start the conversation about what it's like, how it feels to be a professional woman in the workplace, especially in a male-dominated industry.
Thank you. Right, I think we'll finish off on this one if it's okay, because we've finished. It's 7:30 now, so conscious that people have got an hour put aside for this evening.
Yeah.
But one last question, which is from Catherine. How do you decline sexist roles like note-taking in meetings? These undermine you, your role and future conversations with colleagues, as they see you as someone's PA and not PM.
Well, like I said, I did have that, and actually in the end I got so peed off with it, I just refused in the end, and said, actually said, why should I be taking these minutes? Why can't you be taking these minutes? And it is the same as like when you go and get a drink in a meeting and I'll go and get tea, or and all of that. No, I'm not here to get your tea. I'll get you a cup of tea, but you also need to get me a cup of tea, or you need to take the minutes and I'll take the minutes. It's not about not wanting to do any of that stuff. It's about sharing it. Everyone needs tea, everyone needs minutes. It's not my job because I'm a woman. It's our job because that's what we need to do. So just batting it back. And actually, I think if you turn around to a guy in a meeting and said, why is it I'm taking the minutes? Or why is it I'm getting the drinks? They would struggle to answer that question. You'd probably embarrass them, actually. So give it a go.
Thank you. That's really great, Pippa. I've really enjoyed this evening and your presentation. And I think it comes out in all the questions. So there are a number of questions that we've not been able to get to this evening, I'm afraid. So apologies to those that posted questions and we've not had a chance to discuss and share with Pippa, but we will share them with Pippa after this evening, and I'm sure she'll get back to us with some responses which we can then post and share with everyone that's attended this evening. So don't worry, you will get your response at some point very soon. So I think that's all from me. Do you have anything else, Sabrina, from the LinkedIn group?
No, that's all the questions, but Pippa, we wanted to thank you very much for taking time on International Women's Day to support the APM events with the Women into Project Management Special Interest Group. We definitely leave this evening with a lot of homework. So this team being Choose to Challenge and how to create a positive change for all the brilliant tips you gave us tonight. So we can challenge ourselves on our diversity of thinking, on unleashing the cognitive freedom to be ourselves, finding our divine balance. It's all very spiritual tonight. Balance between being assertive and compassionate, between vulnerable and unstoppable. So it was of great inspiration tonight, Pippa, so thank you so much. And the main question was actually, are we open to receive, and are we ready to actually challenge ourselves? So that's really definitely something that we will step away with. Let's go and challenge ourselves. So thank you so much, Pippa, for enabling us to do so, and also inspiring us so much tonight. So thank you very much.
You're very, very welcome.
Well said, Sabrina. Very well said. Thank you for that. That brings us to a close now this evening. So I hope everyone enjoyed the session, and we will be in touch very soon with some relevant links that will take you to the recording of tonight, the slides that Pippa presented, and the answers to the questions that are still outstanding. So thanks very much, everyone. Have a good evening. Take care. Bye-bye.